Greetings to everyone who's watching us. First of all, we would like to thank Lusófona University by means of Professor Dr. Margarida Prieto that made the link between us and this program, and FilmEU Talks, Experts on Air, for allowing us to present our projects, ideas, and share our research in art and art education. Our session is divided into moments, so we will present the conception of the project and its concepts, and then we will point out projects and matters we research about. Brazilian state universities have been playing an important part in scientific development in the country. Its main goals are to be public, free, and of quality. Along to these goals, there are a tripod that holds the state university's actions: teaching, research, and the extension to the surrounding communities as a public return for the state investments. So we base our actions in these three forms of work. The Apotheke painting studio is a project of the State University of Santa Catarina in south part of Brazil, and it was found after Professor Dr. Lampert has been a guest professor on Teachers College at Columbia University NY. When she returned to the university and the painting classes in Brazil, she created the project using the ideas of John Dewey's in Art as Experiences philosophy. A project that articulates teaching, university research, and extension to the community. It works in collaboration with the surrounding community and has interest in artists, teachers, and teachers training, with painting as main subject and experience as a core value. You can follow us on our social media, where you can also find our academic articles. Instagram at Revista Apotheke. After the pandemics, we have been generated content on platforms and channels. It's very simple to find information about us because we spread content for free. And we also have a scientific journal, Revista Apotheke, with quarterly publications. This is important to remark. The project has governmental support and it's located in a public university in south of Brazil. The Apotheke Painting Studio is a teaching, research, and extension project and can be understood as a permanent program at University of Santa Catarina. The students can use the credits as curricular component. It also has 22 extension actions, micro-practices, workshops, open classes, courses, residencies, studio classes, video collections, a YouTube channel within master classes, a Padlet, educational materials, master and doctoral theses, dissertations, groups of studies, and more. It has a network along to other universities and departments as partnership programs: Apotheke School, Apotheke and John Dewey, Apotheke at Dissidence, Apotheke Fashion, Apotheke Design, and Apotheke Londrina. We work on training artists and teachers. About the learning subjects taught by Professor Dr. Josieli Lampert, we study about being artists, teachers, and about painting and art education. Specifically, we have constructed concepts about studio class, clinical work, and micro-practice. We have been studying platforms to learn how to teach art in the online context and on the pedagogical documentation as a research strategy. Now some points about John Dewey's concepts that we have been studying. Dewey's philosophy is based on observation of the following. We learn what we practice. We learn through the conscious reconstruction of experience. We learn by association. We never learn a single separate thing. All learning should be integrated into life, achieved from the real life. Our research methodology starts from the artistic practice as well as the pictorial practice, painting, in other words. Dewey's concept of experience is a social practice, which differs from the concept of experience introduced by William James, for example, and also differs from the idea of experimentation as an experiment, indicated by Charles Sanders Peirce. In painting, we observe teaching in the studio and the use of the studio by the artist. If we consider the pedagogical, political, and discursive dimension, this makes sense for the purpose we wish. Here's a picture of the painting studio at university during a practice generated by a challenge based on the artist and teacher Hans Hofmann. Something important, we study artists, teachers, painters, and we start from their practices to create challenges in our classes within the research process. It also works as a conceptual basis. Here's a scheme by John Baldacchino and Graham Sullivan, which demonstrates part of the research in our project studies. The process of painting unites experience closer to art, and experimentation closer to education. The whole process is a cycle that feeds itself by its own motion. In these images, we think of artists and teachers as experts of their learning process to be a constant reflection. Of course, studying painting has to do with the procedures, techniques, and the expertise. But it also has to do with how to document images, how to access images, and how to create things that don't exist through painting. This has generated a type of experimental research with content about color studies in the recent years. We used to base our investigations on Johannes Itten, Joseph Albers, Wassily Kandinsky, and Paul Klee, artist teachers that taught about these matters. We took the knowledge from Bauhaus to Black Mountain College and brought it to Brazil. Creativity is about friction, with changes, with breaking rules or inventing new ones. Teaching creativity is not a matter of offering models, methods, or means. It is instead moving towards a direction of finding and solving problems. Being together in collaboration also evidences the social practice. This is a Dewey's foundation that we put in practice. Now I pass the word to Professor Dr. Josiele Lampert.
Hello. So I would like to thank you again for the opportunity to share our research with you, and I invited you all to visit our university in South Brazil. In this way, I would like to introduce some examples about our research practice. So this image presents the meetings of the study group Apotheke Painting Studios, discuss about John Dewey's book and painting challenge based on Joseph Albers and Johannes Itten. So by this image, we think that art is a work of mapping, planning, and think instantly of free expression. Color is the main subject of Joseph Albers' literature, and you use to not only follow his teachings, but to put in practice, to criticize, and to break its rule, to instigate the group's member production. The principle of continuity is a core value on our studies. Because everything we do in studies doesn't finish in the end of the meetings or in class. It reverberates on our research and artistic practice. We spent 1 year doing Albert's exercise of interaction of color. With this experience, we developed a book and offer courses for teachers and for artists. It's called a study on the exercise by Joseph Albers on painting and color by Lamperty and Silva. It's like a catalog of a study group, Apotheke. There are many other publications among books, ebooks, and a quarterly art periodic available in our website that we publish and continue to publish. It's like a part of academic life. So this image show us study one of Joseph Albert's class that we found out in our research to sketch blindly. We reproduce this proposition as painting challenging. To open eyes is a living metaphor created by Joseph Albers to art education and for artists. It's related to creating process. So teaching school teachers about the color content, we created a metaphor for interaction of color using light. Interaction is another core value for us because we think that mailing is about sharing knowledge. So during pandemics, we've organized our social medias and platforms to continue our practice through online class. We've created a channel, a YouTube channel for our class, where we hold events to talk with many partner artists and teachers. We've made a public profile within Padlet platform, where there is all the annual content we work on the university class and study groups meetings. We are currently invited in virtual platform to create online communities with course to promote the painting studio as a laboratory that gets in touch to technology. There are many research dissertations and theses that make basis for this part, like masters and PhDs. Here's a project of pandemic painting we made totally online during the pandemics. A way to get closer to each other and practice to move our brushes based on print screens of the Zoom meetings. It's one of the member painted other and we shared two results all together. This work will be shown in our next exhibition in this year in September in Brazil. So at this point, we would like to introduce some examples of artistic work and picture charts we created. These are objects of our research. We have the concept that we teach what we know, and we know what we practice, and also in a way that require autonomy. This Paulo Freire also. It's about democracy in Brazil. It's like democracy and autonomy in Brazil. Paulo Freire was a great educator in Brazil. It's about how to be acting, doing, feeling all together. As experiencing Dewey is a social practice. We went to study with autonomy and freedom onto the creative process. However, we know that we are in a university and the knowledge we develop has to have a specific character. So we created class in which the challenges were developed based also on Johanna Zitten's color contrast studies, creating composition that presents pictorial problems. Here are some examples of undergraduate students' work. In this occasion, we made a final exhibition called Open Studio in the university for the end semesters with our students' productions. More examples of the students' work based on painting challenge development by postgraduate student research. So we organized the table as an invitation to a pedagogical stand because we find it as a main point to the experience. In the undergraduate class, we care a lot about different scenarios. There are books for research, materials for experimentation, similar to a painting studios, as an invitation for the creativity process in painting. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to present our research. We look for to see in Brazil. Joviana, can follow, please?
Yes. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes,
Just
clearly.
to check the sound. Yeah, okay. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joviana. I am a master's student of the Visual Art Graduate Program at UDESC. And Professor Josiele Lampert is my advisor, as everyone else here. And I will present a little bit of my teaching internship at a pictorial process class ministered by my advisor, Professor Lampert, at the undergraduate program in visual arts in the year of 2021. The class and my internship, it happened during the pandemics, so we had to be carried out virtually. I will also present some of my research regarding pedagogical documentation. Like I said, the pictorial class where I did my internship happened in a virtual mode. It was the first time a painting class at the university, the painting class, which is a very practical matter at the university, was held in a virtual way. So it was very challenging for everyone, including teachers and students, as for the teaching area in general. Professor Josiele had to adapt the whole physical studio from the university into an online set. So she would present materials, artistic references, like the North American Alex Katz painter that I show here, for example, through the computer. So everything, including the practice activities we're doing through the computer. She would demonstrate mixing painting processes as well, and activities or challenges, as we call the practical activities at the studio. And students will make them at home to present every next class. We used to use the platform Padlet to upload the painting works and processes, like is shown here. And students will present them to each other and discuss the problems and the solutions that they found through the process, along with the professor feedbacks. This platform is a tool that was kept on use. We still use it after the use during the pandemics, since we found it's a very practical tool to teach. And regarding my internship, I presented this artist who is Lúcia Laguna. She's an artist from the suburb of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And I was presented to her by my advisor, Professor Lampert, during the internship. She has a very unique painting feature that I consider very interesting, especially to those who like to research painting process. So her work includes a type of collage and assemblage aspect in the pictorial subject. The themes that she explores in her work normally include nature and landscape, especially the one seen by the window of her house, like the two works that I present here, that belongs to a series called Garden. One interesting aspect of her painting, besides the palette that is very diverse in each series, is that she generally intends to accomplish organic and figurative forms into an abstract style, mixing both languages, figurative and abstract, through an overlapping painting process. But the second and most interesting aspect of her procedure in painting concerning my research is that she likes to keep all her references, artistic or theoretical, visually exposed in the studio so that they are like documents that reminds her of her likes, dislikes, or pictorial approaches. So these reminders are, for example, many lists of references about artists, artworks, books, notes, postcards, pictures, and other artifacts that she keeps hanging in the walls of her studio as instruments, but also as a methodology that she uses to inspire her and motivate her to create art. Since my research is about pedagogical documentation through the diaries, journals, or journey documents, as I call them, used to register painting processes, during the internship, I also interviewed one of the students who are used to keep documentation about her painting studies and works. She's an artist teacher from São Paulo, and here are some images of the journal she made for the class where I did the internship. One interesting aspect about the way she organized this journal in order to keep record of the lessons, activities, homeworks, or her paintings is that she takes pictures of all the material that she does in and outside of the class and print them to register all together in the same place. So I found it very useful documentation methodology, especially regarding big size paintings, which are difficult to document because of their size. So this turns into a very practical way to revisit the records some moment in the future for new works or studies. And here are some more images of the digital journal she made in another time for the residency that she did at the Apotheke studio in the university. Similar to the other document, the document shown before, she kept record of everyday routine, including the activities at Dr. Lampert classes, museum visits that she did, studies in the studio or artworks, but except by the fact that she detailed very specifically the day routine that she had here at the studio. So again, this object tends to turn itself in a very effective way to keep registered studies, especially in painting, that can be revisited in further moments in the future in order to keep the research and continuities. This is one of the goals to maintain a documentation on art. Another relevant point of our research is that we observe the classes we attend, and we do research based on these classes, using then the diaries, journals, and journey documents, as I call them, to keep the registrations also from the observations. My research with documentation started still during the undergraduate school in visual arts at UDESC, studying artists who created visual and writing journals, like the Brazilian Anita Malfatti, the French Louise Bourgeois, and the diary made by our professor, Dr. Lampert, the diary that she did for her PhD at Columbia University in New York City in the year of 2013, if I'm not wrong. I think this was the year. Here are some images of the journals I have been making since 2014, and they consist of visual and written journey documents where I keep record of my art studies regarding classes in and out of the university. As a continuity of my research during undergraduate school, now for my master's degree, I keep on researching documentation in order to deepen my knowledge in this matter. These are images of some of the work I have done with journals for my master's degree in visual arts so far. And these are some images of the journals made by a student during my teaching internship. As for my research, the students were asked to build their own journey document along the class. So the task was to register all their painting processes during the first and second units of the semester. By registering their painting processes with specific and detailed descriptions that were required. Right now, at this moment, I am discussing their answers in my dissertation according to concepts of educational experience, continuity, and interaction by John Dewey, who is an American philosopher that we study in our group. And also the concepts of reverberations, metaphor, and portal, according to Rita Irving, who is a current professor at Columbia University in Canada, and she studies artography as a research methodology for artists, teachers, and researchers. This work intends to think and discuss how the journey document this object can be an instrument for reflection in painting processes, as for portals that make it possible for new knowledges and comprehensions in art and art education through the articulation between theoretical and practical studies in order to contribute for educational and critical experiences in visual arts teachings and in the painting classes as well. I will finish my presentation at this point. I would like to thank you all very much for listening and participating here with us, and also for being able to present a little bit of my research at this event. Thank you very much.
So now I will continue. Hello, everyone. My name is Raoni. I am a researcher of the project Apotheke Painting Studio and a master's student in the field of visual arts teaching. At this point, I will present my experience in the teaching internship and how it reverberated in my research, which I will address next. As explained by Joviana, in the teaching internship is the moment when doctoral and master's students can have the experience of teaching in undergraduate courses and articulate issues of their research with practice. During the internship, I had the opportunity to follow Professor Lampert's classes and teach a class on Joseph Albert's interaction of color content. This teaching experience helped me develop new hypotheses and questions that contribute to delimit the research and glimpse new paths for it. In other words, the teaching internship is an opportunity that unites research, teaching, and arts practice. And we think this is very important to develop the research. The research I have been developing is entitled Reflections on Joseph Albers' Art Teaching based on documents from the Black Mountain College period, Approximations with John Dewey. Explaining a little of why I choose this theme, Joseph Albers is an artist teacher's reference for Professor Lampert's classes, as I said before, but I had no contact with this author during my undergraduate studies. So my first contact with the book Interaction of Color, which was during the internship, teaching internship, I thought would be very interesting to develop deeper knowledge into Albert's teaching. However, I had a hard time to find research and literature about him here in Brazil. And then in one of the conversations that I had with Professor Lampert, she mentioned about the Albers Foundation. This is an American institution that preserves several documents about Joseph Albers and then Annie Albers, his wife. So I contacted this institution and obtained several documents, such as transcripts of lectures, interviews, and pedagogical documents. These documents became my research object, in which I intend to understand more of the approach developed by Albers during his time at Black Mountain College. Joseph Albers taught mainly in 3 institutions: the German Bauhaus School, and the Americans Black Mountain College and Yale University. One of the arguments I used for this work, as I previously mentioned, was the few literature I've found when I did a survey on Joseph Albers and his art teaching in Brazilian scientific platforms. The few research I found were focused on the period when Albers was at the Bauhaus. So the period of Black Mountain and Yale have several gaps that can be explored. I choose Black Mountain College because it was the period that the artist emigrated to the United States due to the Nazi rise in Germany and developed his own approach to teaching visual arts, dissociating himself from the Bauhaus concepts of bringing art and industry together in order to focus on the development of the perception and representation as a training towards social practice. Joseph Albers questioned the main educational model established in the United States at that time, which prioritized repetition and memorization, or the laissez-faire, the free doing. The Black Mountain College environment being influenced by Deweyan philosophy. So it emphasized education process articulate with democratic principles focused on the experience. Based on this, Albers developed a teaching approach that demands students to be participative, and open to dialogue. And everything needs to be based on the experience. According to Horitz, when asked by his students what they would learn in the semester, Joseph Albers answered that he would teach them to look, to open their eyes. This metaphor presents the principles of Albers' thought, such as distinguishing physical facts from psychic effect and valuing the experience and the investigation. Focusing on the study of perception, he prioritized the analysis of psychic effects. In this way, Albers aimed to demonstrate how color and shape are contextual elements that can have their sense and perceptions transformed depending on where they are inserted. One of the main characters of Albers' approach is based on the proposition of pictorial problems to be solved, such as make something light seems heavy, or investigating the distortion of the form when put into perspective, make two colors seems one, or one color seems two. This image, this light, represents an example of this last one. The green stripe on the yellow background appears to be bluer and cooler than the other that is on the blue background. This is caused by the interaction of the green color with the others around it. One important thing is that Albus aimed to teach about the interactions of colors and shapes by relating them to the everyday situations and social issues. This is something very important to him. So, an approach based on pictorial problems demands a process of investigation in order to search for solutions that don't have only one correct answer. Thus, the focus of the teaching and learning is more rather on the process than on the final result, seeking to value the path taken towards to the solution. Another feature of Albert's teaching approach is to demand active, participative students who know how to expose their process and doubts that emerged in the solving problems. However, they are not in a free-making process, but in organized and planned action by the teacher. In order to not extend myself too much, I'd like to point out that I understand this research as a practice that contributes to rethink my teaching and artist work, which means that I don't understand it is something separate from my life. And so, as Jiri points out, an experience has an end, has no end, but a consummation. In other words, it is constantly generating new questions and new paths. That's how I understand my process in this research. So I'd like to finish this part by thank you all for the opportunity to present some of my research. Thank you all for listening. Lizzie is with you.
Hello, thank you, Rony. My name is Lizzie Lee. I'm undergraduate of UDESC, and my final paper called Reflections on Visual Culture and Painting Teaching, from the color theory of Vasily Kandinsky to the Handmaid's Tale, fruit of the undergraduate research projects that investigated about Vasily Kandinsky's theory of colors, conceptualizes the TV show The Handmaid's Tale through visual culture, analyzes the colors of the TV show The Handmaid's Tale through image reading, propose a painting class on Kandinsky and The Handmaid's Tale for graduation, and reflects on the results of the class and the proposed challenge, and comments on how each student developed their picture thinking based on the challenge proposed in class. As a methodology, a qualitative research approach was used, involving the analysis of primary documentary sources of a conduction with undergraduate students and visual arts, and bibliographical review on the investigated theme. This other research also come from the research of the Apotheke painting studio, is painting practice from earth pigment in the training of teaching artists. It approaches the manufacturing of paintings and how it contributes to the training of artist teachers, for the process in visual arts, and for the process of creating class at school. For the study, the use of earth pigments in the work of the artist Silvia Carvalho was investigated. Practical studies were carried out on how to make paintings with the earth pigments and the use of these pigments in the graduation courses in visual arts. Thank you all for listening.
Hello, everyone. So, in the academic context, the production of academic works is also related to the creation of didactic and pedagogical materials that we use for teaching painting in university classes. To experimental, these materials can be used in teacher training as well as in the school setting. In this case, we present the images from the ongoing research in the Visual Arts PGD program by José Carlos da Rocha, a researcher from the Apotheke Painting Studio project. Here's another example that presents the creation of pedagogical materials based on studies of chromatic interaction, based on the artist and professor Joseph Albers. We presented images related to the ongoing doctoral research of Daniela Almeida. Here we present the material produced in research, ongoing master's degree, with the main objective of exploring the integration of contrast studies from the artist and professor Johan Itten in schools and in the training of artists and teachers, especially at the university level. This research can be utilized by employing different methods, mediums, and propositions. In our case, this material serves to develop picture reasoning. Yes, thank you for listening. Now I pass the floor to Pedro.
Well, thanks again. Now more freely, my name is Pedro, and I'm a PhD student, so my PhD is in progress, and I'll go on by now. Yes, currently, Apotheke Painting Studio has an international cooperation ongoing between the Apotheke Studio and Portuguese universities, as Lusófona University, in which we carry out the research in painting, and promote workshops as well, as these two ones. The one in the left happened here in Lusófona University, and the other one happened there in Faculty of Fine Arts here in Lisbon. This project is founded by the Brazilian agency CNPq, and brought 4 PhD and postdoctoral researchers to Portugal for 1 semester. Remember that we study John Dewey's philosophy. So, through the interaction with the context, conflicts, resistances, impressions have arisen. Experience for Dewey is a process of living that relates intensely and continuously between the word and the subject, as we see. We would like to now show some examples of the artistic works that have been developed within the scope of the research. To conclude, I would like to also extend the invitation for those who see and hear us. We are a university project open to the community. We welcome artists, teachers for artistic residencies, and everyone is invited. We would like to emphasize the structure of the investigative approach based on artistic practice. In this way, We study poetics, rhetoric as layers on translations, using concepts such as procedural collage as a metaphor. Here's some images from the aesthetics of everyday, or aesthetics of everyday life, that enables the relation between art and life. Images collected by Professor Lampert, Artistic Productions. The interest for the aesthetics of everyday life, which underlies the articulation of art and life, seeks the process of creation. These processes of creation are in the studio, in the classroom, and in painting. They are on taps at pictorial reasoning. We try to develop this feature, pictorial reasoning. This alternative way of looking to the domestic scene is an artistic path in this scene. In this sense. Regarding organizing our poetics and reflecting as teacher artists, these works depict domestic scenes and aim to be a study or an essay for a realization of painting. It would be like looking at oneself and realizing that the self-perception is something complex and often undesired, although imposed by our mode of production. How do we access the images that surround us, and how do we consume them? How do we organize these images as possibilities for creation? And why do we select these images and not another ones? These are challenges that color studies have imposed us. There are different ways to see the experience, what we study in our research. Our relation between art and life emerges from this. We read artists' diaries, we read artists' scripts, we study theories, artists' theories, and we gather and we collect. How do we really reflect on what we see? What real experiences can we learn from painting? Teaching is a means of research. We choose between chromatic studies, color theory, studies of the fundamentals of visibility, and visual culture. We find art through the experience. An art-life relation as the same as between school and university. Thank you all, and your disposal. Follow us at Revista Apotheke in Instagram and other social media, and we'll be happy to answer to questions you perhaps have. Thanks.
Hello. What was the biggest difficulty that you did find in the process to create this type of work, this international work with other students from other countries?
Well, thinking about our project as a university contextualized project, it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to get the financial basement or money to go abroad and to bring researchers and things like that. The main point is that Apotheke Studio is a very huge project, and it has almost 10 years of history in it, and it counts a lot when you're talking about and when you're considering taking part of the the selections, the public selections for where the money will go and where the investments will be placed. So I would say the most difficult thing is to create our own history and to create our own references to get this, how to say, get this this level of importance, you know, not only in the university, but in the private publications and the editorials and things like that. So I think the most difficult is to get our own basements.
Well, good afternoon. Well, first of all, thank you for all these wonderful presentations. I'm thrilled. I'm very happy to know your research. As we also deal with the same problems here in this university, problems or challenges as we prefer. There are many points of contact of what you have talked about, all of you, and what we have been doing here, not only in the undergraduate visual arts course, but also in the master in visual art teaching. So I want to pose two questions or to ask for some more information on two topics which are very important to us. One of them is journaling as a process, and orthography, well, is one of our methods also. But one of the questions is, do you feel that keeping a journal, asking your students to have a journal really works for all of the students, or sometimes we have to change that methodology? Because, for instance, here in visual arts degree, we insist a lot in the artist book, which is very different from a journal, an art journal. But for instance, in the master in visual art teaching, we have both exercises or methodologies. And one of the questions I want to pose you is, do you feel that the journal works for everybody? The other question is about creating your own pedagogical materials. And I'm very interested in hearing you about that, because it's something that we insist with our student art teachers, students, or students of visual art teaching, better saying. So this is one of our points. We insist with our students to create their own pedagogical artistic materials. And I want to hear you about these two topics, the journal and the pedagogical art materials, and how can they trigger a creative research, art-based research process. Thank you.
Well, it's a very, very interesting questions, I mean points, because as artists, we see that the journal is a very good mean to create, not only to create, but to reflect our own creation, and to, how to say, to not get in touch creation, but to get used to it. When you keep a journal, when you do a journal, you make a journal, I would say, you get used to it, and you get this kind of automatic placement of creation. So this is very important. In our researches, we are very free to choose methodologies and to investigate about methodologies. We only have a theoretical scope in John Dewey's philosophy. So this is a central and main point of our works. But it's quite free connecting to other references, other artists, teachers, and researchers. So we have this opportunity to make connections between this specific philosophical basement we have and the other methodologies. So journaling is one of them. In our researches, and maybe we would apply it to the classes, to the process. But I'm not sure that it works for everyone. But in my case, in my study, I used to do it. But we're free to choose what we use in our classes, in researches, and then. Well, about the creation of pedagogical materials, yes, this is a very, I would say a very recent practice in our group of studies. We used to do it in the past, but now, especially after pandemics, we have seen that it's important to publish the things we do. And we are now, as a main goal, now we have this will to not only to publish, but to register this kind of materials. And usually we base these materials in the proposals we study about, as Johannes Itten, Joseph Albers, people that have created their own materials, their own proposals, but we use these references to build our own with the same scope, philosophical scope of John Dewey's. So I think that it's a way to be innovative, to make connections. Making connections is a way to be innovative. We don't have to to invent the wheel again, as we say in Portuguese, yes, to invent a new wheel. But we can do, as we know about these references, as we know that these references work in classes, it has powers of teaching. It has a huge possibilities into classes, into the classrooms. We can make these connections and see these connections as innovative things, as innovations. So I really think that we're not making new things, specifically new things. We're creating a new way to see the things, I think. Yes.
Okay, Pedro, I would like to see if someone online wants to answer Inês. Yes, can you do that for us? Thank you.
Is there someone online that wants to make some questions, or actually I don't have access here. We can count on the technique. Yes. Yes. No? Anyone? No one? Yes. One more question. Yes. Thank you.
Pedro.
Yes, Joviana.
No, I would just like to, since I was talking about that, I would just like to add my experience with it.
Yes, please.
Like you said, just to accomplish, like you said, I believe that no methodology as well can work for everyone, right? So it makes sense to you, to your research, to what you do, and you present to the students what we try to articulate what interests to us, but also to the interests of the students, right? So, for example, my experience at the school, once I presented them this work with diaries, and like I said, some of the students really loved it and really, how can I say, did their researches and their works in the diary, and really, I feel that it really worked, and somehow that they could see a meaning in that type of work. They understood the meaning of that the registration can help them really to keep up with their studies. And the registrations could be personal, but not only personal, but the studies at the class too. So personally, I like to mix both type of registration. I like to write or draw or paint things that interest me personally, as Joviana, but also my studies in art. So I like to mix that, and I presented this idea to them, and some liked it and some didn't like it, and some kept on doing and some didn't. So just to accomplish what we were saying, I believe that any methodology is like that, because everybody has his own interests and likes and dislikes and approaches. So it's difficult that one thing will work for everyone. I mean, so you just need to try, you know. And if it makes sense to you, you try, and you will resonate to some people and will not to others. You cannot please everyone.
Yes.
But to my experience, it was really interesting. And the more you do it, I guess, more feedbacks and more insights you have, you deeper your research.
Yes, previously, I wouldn't like to shoot the question for Joviana, but Joviana is actually the specialist in journals. Yes. But I think that journals are great forms for the students and for us artists as researchers and teachers, professors, great ways for us to see our own work, because we can know things, we can do things, and to sell things, but the journals are forms for us to keep this kind of works and keep the plannings, keep the progression that we have, and for us as files, as ways to revisit it once we, I mean, at the time we want. Yes, one more question.
I would like to ask for our crowd here, students mostly, and I will ask if you can put your hands on the air. Who does in here like more artist books? Who does artist books here as a practice and like it? So we have here 1, 2, more than 50%, 60, 70% of the crowd is on artist books. And who prefers the journals? Cadernos, graphic diaries. Well, one there. We have 10% of the crowd, 50% of the crowd enjoying. So I will ask now to Inês if she has another question, okay?
Well, it's not a question again, it's more for you to comment. I've noticed the importance of the table in many of the presentations. And well, this just for you to comment on the importance on this kind of archive of daily objects and the role, to expand a bit more on the role that the table and the way of presenting simple objects can have, because that's another point in common that we have. So I would like to hear expanding on it.
Once again, a very good theme, a very good question, not a question, a remark, I would say, because we see the table as the table in classes, I mean in classrooms, the table as something similar to the artists' tables. And in the table, we have an office, I would say, and we compare the table to the painting, yes, the canvas, yes, as a way or as a place we put the things in movement, yes, and especially in the classes we have been developing this kind of concept or proposition that the table is a kind of a scenario. Yes, just as the classroom is a scenario. And curiously, the next thematic of our research journal for I think, next 4 months now, is going to be the teaching scenario. So I'd like to invite you, if you have interest in writing and academic writing, so to take part on it. It's open to submissions until, I think, this theme until December this year. Yes, and especially in the researchers by Professor Lampert, the table is a place for us to place things that we find important to the class, but not only the things important to the class, but ways to relate, to make relations between art and life, just as we said in the end of the presentation. So the table is this. The table is just as the kitchen table. The artist's table is like a kitchen table. We have recipes, we have tools, we have preparations, we have procedures. So we use it as a metaphor for us to think about the simplicity of creation, the possibility, the strong possibility of creation. All of us, or mostly all of us, have tables in our homes. So the table is an invitement. The table is a way for us to place the things we find interesting to creation. So it's a kind of a metaphor, but also it's a procedure we use in the classes. Yeah. Yes, more questions? Do we have more questions there online?
Can I complement this?
Yes, for sure. Haoni.
I think this idea of table is very important because in traditional pedagogicals, the table is something that put a distance between students and teachers. And in our concept, the table is a place to share. So we have a lot of reference, we have some demonstrations sometimes, but the main idea is to be a place when the people can go there, check the reference, have a conversation, have an idea. So have these ideas of shared experience, you know, to show something, have a feedback, and then we go out to our canvas and paint again and go there. Is a place to talk, is a place is an invitation, as Pedro said. So I think this is something very important.
Yes, we used to share the things, the tools, the resources, the books in the classes tables, just as we share food in our homes tables. Yes, it's a kind of metaphor, but a way to get in touch with the students, get in touch with the who take part in the classes. Yeah. Professor Margarida.
Hello, everyone. I would like to add something with the idea of a table as a scenario for painting or other artistic practices the table is a horizontal surface, and we sleep in an horizontal surface. We go to the beach and we just lie down on the sand to relax. So there is this idea of a place for be at ease, and in some sense, as a work instrument, it has this sense of community, aggregation. We all go and sit around a very big table and draw and talk with each other, as your colleague was saying. But there is this very ancient relation with the horizontal. It's a very nice place to be, except when we are dead. So when we are alive, it's still a place for relaxing, and this feel of relaxing as a feeling of creative state also, coincidentally, is very nice. So when we are looking at a painting or doing a painting in a vertical surface, as we do when we paint something on the wall, we are always active. It's very tiredful. And we do have some of our students saying that at the end of the day, they are exhausted. They can't stand with the legs. They really are, oh, I just want to get some rest. And when we do that in a horizontal surface, it gets easier. It flows. It's, in a way, a more doable thing. It's not so hard. Though it's hard, we can do the same things, except with the very big dimension. We can't do it in the horizontal. We lose the perspective and, everything. But at the end, when we can use the horizontal surface, everything goes a little bit easier. And that's why we still have very long tables and individual tables. They are locked together so everyone can be around each other and to see everyone works and discuss everything on the horizontal. It's easier, isn't it? Everyone is shaking their heads in a positive way. So, thank you. Anyone else with a question?
Hi, Pedro.
So I saw the lemons in the PowerPoint as a way to disturb the body, but you have more ideas how to disturb and make art with the other perspective than the conceptual one?
We have some other exercises based on Joseph Albers, thinking about this integration of the body in the creative process. I don't know if Raoni would like to comment on it, because I know that he did some of these exercises in one of the classes. Yes, would you like to comment Albers's exercises?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Yeah. Sylvia
Can you repeat?
Remarked that she has perceived the presence of the lemons in the tables. Yeah, the lemons. That exercise it's related to Johanna Sitten. Yeah, to how to say, to instigate the body and to integrate the body in the creative process. And I've remembered that you worked on some of the Joseph Albers's exercises to integrate the body, to open eyes. Would like you to comment?
Yes. Oh, this is something very interesting, because it's something that I'm discussing now in my dissertation, because I'm analyzing some documents that Albers put this idea that we can see things but the perception is related with not just with the eye, but with the body too. So he discussed this idea that we can have this perception with the body. So this is why he did a lot of exercise of with moves, repeating moves to understand some form with the body. The conscience of the body of the form help you to understand something you are analyzing with the eye, you know. So this exercise with the lemon is something like you, when you bite that, you have this flavor in your mouth, and then it's something different, and you
get out of your mind.
think.
Yes, you get out of your mind. You get out of your mind almost.
Yeah. So you have another perception for things because you have this shock in your body, you know. So this is something to put you in a mood. And Albers does something similar to instigate the body to understand what are you seeing. So if you're trying to painting some expression, the idea to simulate this expression in your body, this help you to understand the feelings on that, you know. So this idea of perception related with the eye, related with the body, I think is the idea of unity of John Dewey too, that we can separate the thoughts, the feelings, and the action, you know, is something united. So I think it go in this way, this idea of to think about how can we feel the world with the body too.
Specifically, I was talking about an exercise by Joseph Albers that you've reproduced there in the studio, which is basically mostly like to put a circle in the center of the classroom and us to get brushes or like sticks and to draw in air the circle, to percept how we do it with the whole arm. So you have the opportunity to percept your own body doing the movement to create that kind of form. Not only with the eyes you see the shapes, but you have the consciousness that the shapes need, the shape needs to be placed with your body. Is it something like that?
And the conscience of when we move this form, put in different perspective, what happened with the lines of this object, you know? So is to feel these changes, and you can see that, but something that Betsy Edwards and Joseph Albers put is that what is difficult sometimes in art is to see things, because we almost treat this like something automatic or natural, don't need to pay attention on that stuff. But I think something they discuss a lot is that we need to learn how to see things. You know, it's not just something that we do without practice. So we need to learn how to see different colors and the interaction of colors and these lines on different situations. The lines of some object when we see upside down, the lines of the object when we see this in like in front of you or backwards. So everything changed, you know. So the idea of shape and forms need to be something contextual. I think this is something very interesting that these authors shows to us.
Pedro, can I add something?
Yes,
Is it
Juliana,
possible?
yes, I think, is it, are we on time? Yeah? Yes, I think yes.
No, I was just gonna comment that this topic remind me of one exercise we did at the Apotheke studio, handled by the professor Josieli, where this topic about seeing things differently, in a different way, or open our eyes, like Raoni said. We build a scene with objects. We put it in a stage, and then we build this scene with different type of objects, and then the exercise was to draw or paint the holes, what was between the objects. So the exercise was not to paint, for example, the scene, the objects themselves, the shapes and the forms, but what we saw through them.
The gaps.
And that was very interesting. I think you did too, maybe.
Yeah, I remember.
Before, yeah. And that exercise is very interesting because you really start seeing like things differently, or seeing things that you normally don't see when you search for the shape.
Yeah,
when you look through it, it's very interesting.
It's also, I think, also a way to disturb perception, just as the lemon. Disturb the body to create new connections.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
To get out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more? Yeah, online, do we have questions, more contributions? I think, yeah, one more.
To finish.
Well, again, thank you. So there are so many questions that arise to me. Well, I will focus on one, all about, well, we are talking about seeing, feeling, creating not only with sight or vision, but also with the body, the embodied experience of art and of objects and the world we relate to. But, well, there are many questions, but I want to focus on one, which is the way your practice as an artist interacts with your practice as a teacher, which is another of our concerns, and also as a researcher. And we are always trying to move in all these fields, and, well, sometimes they are all the same. So I want, if you can comment on this, I will be delighted. Thank you.
Very well-placed contribution. So, in my case specifically, I used to use the artography methodology, so it's almost a demand for me to articulate at some point, the teaching, the research, and the artistic production. So, but for the teammates, the colleagues that don't specifically use artography, this is also a demand by Professor Lampert. Yeah, it's a kind of obligatory thing, but it's also not just an obligatory thing, but a way for us to get in movement. So, once again, in my specific case, I run a project that thinks about one of the procedures we've developed in the group, which is called micro-practice or painting micro-practice. It's quite related to workshop, to a workshop concept, but it has some specifications. And one of them is that you need, or you're invited to take the things you do in this painting micro-practice, which is mostly a class, mostly a workshop, but the things that you do there need to be taken to your artistic process. It's based on the principle of continuation by John Dewey. And it's a way to articulate this kind of thing. The activity on classes as teacher, and the artistic production, and also the results of that, the data we collect doing this or doing that, are part of the researches. So this kind of tripod are bases to our researches, and the researches are a way for us to produce, in this our specific case is painting, and the researches, the articles we write, the journals, and are a way for us to publish our work, because we are artists, but we're not necessarily related or inside the artistic circle. Here in Portugal or there in Brazil or whatever. So a way to publish is to publishing articles. So one kind of a way to articulate the artistic process and the academic process, and a way to get that data, a way to get in movement. The classes, for example, the micro practice we do, we get into a cycle of procedures that we get used to paints, we get used to materials, we get used to papers, canvas, and we get in touch with the material. So I see another way to articulate the pedagogical process and the artistic process. Something like that. I don't know if I answered well. Yes. Thank you. Once again, is there someone online who wants to take part on it, to comment, to remark something?
Can I just add something?
Yes.
This idea of the orthography.
Yes, I think last comments, but yes.
The orthography was a methodology that I knew in the Apotheke. So it was something very new for me, but makes a lot of sense now, because my research is related to documents. So I'm analyzing documents. So it could be like documental research. But something that I understood, and it is related with orthography, and Hitler even studied Eisner, and Eisner studied Dewey, so it is related with Dewey too, is that we can separate things, you know? So life and research is just one thing. And when I put this research into my life, I understood that my conclusions of the documents is a kind of reverberations of what I do. So for example, the classes that I did, my artist work, everything is related with my analysis. You know, everything is influence each other. So I can separate these things. So that's why the orthography is something that makes a lot of sense to me in this research. The analysis and the conclusions that I got analyzing the documents has influence of my teaching and my artist's work. So we can separate these things.
Yeah, it seems when we say that we can separate things, it seems very shallow, not deep, you know, but just as I said, the research, thinking about not only orthography or whatever means to make research, the research or the writing, the thinking is a way to connect things and to get deeper on this question. So we can't separate things, yes, but we can go deeper in this reflection through the texts, through the writing, through painting, through the remarks we do. So I think it's proof. I mean, it's deeply connected with this will we have in articulating the actions we do in university. Thinking about and remembering that the university there in Brazil, in Brazilian universities, we need to deliver this back to the community. So how to deliver this back to community? In classes, in academic productions, and things like that. Yeah. So I think that's it. More contributions? No? Yeah, I think it's on time. Huh? Once again, I would like to thank Lusófona University, Professor Dr. Margarida Prieto, who made the link between us, and FilmEU Talks, expert on air, for us, allowing us to show some of the project and some of our researches. It was a great pleasure. Thanks for the teammates there in Brazil, and the other ones who are here in Portugal as well. And once again, a pleasure. Thanks.